My name is Emma. Ever since I dropped out of high school, I've poured everything into my work. I decided to leave high school because there was something I just had to do. Although my parents were worried, they supported my decision. I believe that I am where I am today because of their support. Recently, my parents, to whom I am deeply grateful, told me that they are considering letting go of our family home. This home is a single-family house that was handed down from my grandparents. It has been renovated over the years, but as it has been used for many years, it has started to show signs of wear and tear. With my parents getting older, they are considering moving to a barrier-free apartment and demolishing the family home. Indeed, I realized that our old home was indeed old, and so I proposed to my parents that we live together. I may get married eventually, so we might not be able to live together for long. However, I wanted to give back to my parents who had supported me without denying the decisions I made when I was young. So my parents and I moved into a new apartment. We now have more rooms than we did in our old house, and since we live on a high floor, my parents are delighted, saying, "The view is great, and we even have a hobby room." Then one day, while I was living peacefully with my parents, I got a call from my younger sister, Jane. Jane and I have not been on good terms for a long time. That's because she feels ashamed of me. When I decided to drop out of high school, Jane was furious. "Why are you quitting high school, Emma? I don't want any of my friends to find out that my sister dropped out of high school because it's embarrassing. From now on, pretend we don't know each other." Although Jane and I went to different high schools, it seems that me dropping out of high school was something to be ashamed of for Jane. Jane is a very hard worker and attended a higher ranked high school than I did, so she has always looked down on me. Jane, whose favorite phrase is, "Emma is stupid," made fun of me at the time, saying, "There's no way you're going to succeed in what you want to do. You can't even understand that, Emma, because you're stupid." I was tired of hearing Jane tell me almost every day that you're causing trouble for our parents by dropping out of high school, so you should leave. So as soon as I started earning money from part-time jobs after dropping out of high school, I left home. After 10 years have passed since then, and Jane had also left home. There was no communication between Jane and me, and since Jane started living alone in college, it seems she has not been in touch with our parents much either. When our parents decided to demolish our family home, they apparently consulted not only me, but also Jane. However, Jane just said, "I don't care about that old house. Do whatever you want." My parents were racking their brains, wondering, why did Jane turn out like that? So when they got a call from Jane, they were surprised. According to Mother, who answered the phone, it seems that Jane got married without telling our parents anything. "So you've decided to live in a condo, right? We'll come visit with your husband sometime. Show us around." With these words, it was revealed that Jane was married. My parents, who had no clue, seemed quite surprised, but Jane herself casually shrugged it off, saying, "Didn't I mention it?" It was also revealed that Jane wasn't planning on having a wedding ceremony, which felt quite off. Jane was a girly girl who, since her childhood, had always dreamt of being a princess. She had even talked in detail about the kind of dress she wanted to wear at her wedding. It was quite strange that someone like her would get married without having a wedding ceremony. I wondered if her husband didn't have much money, but according to Jane, her husband worked at the same company as her. The company where Jane works is a well-known corporation, recognized by everyone nationwide. If he was working at such a company, he should have enough money, which made it even more mysterious. Finally, the day came when Jane visited her parents' house. Wow, such a large and clean room. The view was amazing. "Excuse our intrusion." Jane's husband, left standing, greeted as Jane, without any hesitation, began to explore each room, even though it was her childhood home. Jane's husband is named Scott. He is a fresh-faced man with an expensive-looking watch on his wrist. What was strange was that, despite his very proper appearance, he didn't meet our eyes at all. After introducing himself to the parents, Scott was exploring the rooms without any restraint, just like Jane. Your parents are amazing. The station is close, and there's a shopping mall just around the corner. You moved to a great place. Yeah, all thanks to Emma. When my mother smiled at me, I humbly replied, "It wasn't a big deal." To which Jane made a deliberately mean face, saying, "Really? You have an older sister? I didn't notice. I never thought that such a beautiful and expensive-looking room would have an older sister living here." Huh? Jane, Emma is not freeloading. My father was about to explain, but Jane ignored him. Pointing at me, she beckoned Scott over. Hey, Scott. Do you believe this ugly woman is my sister? This is Jane's sister you've been talking about? I didn't realize because you two look nothing alike. Suddenly mocked by Jane and Scott, I stood dumbfounded. My mother scolded, "Jane, what are you saying?" But Jane didn't seem to care. My sister couldn't even graduate high school. She's not the brightest. There's a big difference between us, you know. We who have graduated from a state university. I was shocked when I heard that Jane's sister couldn't even properly graduate high school, but it seems like it's true. If she had someone like this in her family, it's no wonder Jane would be embarrassed. Laughing together, Jane and Scott opened the door to my room as they continued their conversation. And then, "Ugh!" she exclaimed in disgust. "What's the point of hoarding so much comic books? It's creepy. Are you still into that nerdy stuff?" My room's walls are covered with comic books, because I'm a comic book artist. The reason I dropped out of high school was because I wanted to dedicate myself entirely to comic books. Jane is the type that feels disgust towards such subcultures, what we'd call extroverted. Just like how Jane can't understand why I, being introverted and passionate about comics, I can't understand why Jane applies her mascara so heavily. Well, I'm a comic book artist. These are all my references. You're probably not even a successful comic book artist, are you? You're still mooching off mom and dad. It's disgraceful. Just get out already. Confused by what she was saying, I instinctively replied, "What?" "So just get out! Scott and I are going to be living in this house from now on." "What?" "Jane, I've heard nothing of this." Mother and father both exclaimed in surprise. Ignoring their shock, Jane laughed snidely. "Scott and I will take care of mom and dad. You're no longer needed, so get out. Aren't you embarrassed to still be mooching off them? Not only are you ugly, but you're also stupid." At Jane's words, Scott just chuckles. Holding back an angry mother, I said, "All right." Jane and Scott's attitude had not only upset my parents, I was furious too. I wouldn't let them get away with this. I decided to give in to Jane's demand. "All right, I'll move out in a few days, and you and Scott can live here. But remember, I'm not giving you any money." Sure. Bye, sis. Please, move out as soon as you can." After having their say, Jane and Scott headed home. "The next time we come, it'll be to move in," they triumphantly told my parents before leaving. My parents told me, "There's no need for you to move out." But I, who had sworn revenge on Jane and Scott, responded, "No, I'm moving out. I have a place to go," and moved out promptly. Jane and Scott soon moved into our family home. On the day of the move, "Have you moved out yet?" Jane asked over the phone. I replied in exasperation, "I'm on my way out now, so don't worry." Jane always behaves politely to our parents, never being mean to them. However, she often seemed to belittle me. To our parents, both Jane and I were their beloved daughters. They told Jane and Scott that it hurts to hear them badmouth me, but it seems the two didn't take it to heart. Then, a month later, just as I predicted, I got a call from Jane. As I picked up the phone, I thought, here it comes. And a nearly crying Jane blurted out, "Emma! The property management company of the apartment called me, saying they haven't received the rent. What's going on? They even said if I continue to be in arrears, they'll kick me out." "Why would I pay the rent? I don't live there anymore, do I?" "I've heard from mother and father. You were paying the rent because you wanted to show your gratitude to them, right? Why did you stop?" "Like I said, I don't live there, so I don't have an obligation to pay the rent." "Just bring the money right now. The utility bills are also ridiculously high." Being disgusted with Jane, who kept talking and hung up, I called my boyfriend. Liam, Jane just asked me to come over. I'm going to our parents' house. Okay, I'll come with you. I'm worried about you, Emma, and I haven't seen your parents in a while. The reason why I immediately had a place to go after leaving my parents' home is because my boyfriend, Liam, offered me a room. As we were considering marriage, this past month was a good practice period for us. I went to my parents' house with Liam. As I opened the door of the house, Jane, red with anger, showed up. Did you bring the money? Pay the money properly for the sake of showing gratitude to our parents. Do you think I'm a struggling cartoonist, Jane? How do you think I can afford the rent for such a luxury apartment? Well, I don't know, but you were able to pay until now, right? Please pay the rent and utility bills. I won't. Jane and Scott, you both work for respectable companies, right? Why can't you pay your own rent? At my question, Jane was at a loss for words. I noticed that Jane might not have the money. Jane was dressed in branded clothing from head to toe, and I noticed a luxury-looking watch on Scott's arm, who was also decked out in branded items. Isn't it that Jane and Scott can't pay the rent? Not that they won't? You said you wanted to take care of Mother and Father, but I heard you've left all the housework to Mother. Aren't you and Scott just living off Mother and Father? Jane, who was struck at the heart, bit her lip. Scott, who was not looking at me, but only at Liam, raised his trembling voice. Why is Liam here? Huh? Liam? Scott seemed startled, while Jane appeared nonplussed. Liam, who had been watching the sisters quarrel with a troubled look, then introduced himself with a smile. Ah, hello there. I see you already knew. I'm dating Emma with the intention of marrying her. What? Emma and Liam are dating? What the hell? Who is this Liam guy? Scott, seemingly agitated, addressed Jane, who seemed not to be following the conversation. Don't you know? He's a voice actor from an anime that caused a societal buzz. You've seen him on TV and all. What? Why is my sister dating such a guy? It's because Emma is the one who drew the original story for that socially influential anime. When Liam gently explained about me, Jane's face was a picture of shock. Actually, I had a series in a boys' magazine, and that comic had become so popular, it was considered a societal phenomenon. Even Jane, who was not well versed in comics, recognized the title and turned pale, seeming to regret all the times she had underestimated me now that she knew I was rich. I sighed at Jane's sudden change in attitude and told Jane and Scott, if you can't pay, then leave right now. I'll be demanding the 1 month's rent from you later. Don't say that, sis. Scott and I, we got hooked on gambling and ran out of money. It turned out that Jane and Scott had become deeply absorbed in slot machines and had lost a considerable amount of money. The reason they decided to live with their parents back home was also due to a lack of funds. It seemed they even borrowed money from shady sources, and most of their decent salary was going towards repaying that debt, which was quite shocking. I have no intention of helping Jane, who has always been mocking me. Our parents are moving again, so you and Scott should leave right away. Why are Mom and Dad moving? So you won't come crying to them. I can easily imagine debt-ridden Jane causing trouble for our parents. If you don't leave promptly, I will be charging you for the second month's rent as well. When I sternly made that clear, Jane and Scott reluctantly said, okay, and the gathering dispersed. My parents, who had been out, heard about this later and called Liam to apologize, but Liam seemed unfazed. Perhaps it would be best to avoid seeing Jane for a while, he said, and helped me find a new place for my parents to move to. I promptly bought a new apartment, and my parents prepared to move, once again. I'm sorry for the trouble, my parents said, and I replied, it's only natural to repay the favor to you both, who supported me when I made the drastic decision to drop out of high school. I am what I am today because of you. My parents were brought to tears at this. Jane and Scott seemed to be struggling with debt repayments even after that, but I had no obligation to show mercy, so I demanded full payment for the 1 month's rent and utilities I had fronted. But Jane and Scott didn't pay back the money and stopped answering their phones, so I called their workplace directly and finally received the payment. However, this caused everyone at their company to find out about the debt-ridden couple, Jane and Scott. Apparently, they can't quit their jobs because they need the money, and they continued to work, feeling quite uncomfortable. Afterwards, I married Liam. Our parents gave us their blessings, and we've been leading a happy life. Although I've cut ties with Jane and Scott as blood-related siblings, I wish for them to live strong.